I mean, it's just simple logic again, going back to the math. So you've got the three macronutrients: carbohydrates, fat, and protein. Essential means something you must consume. There are essential fats, we've covered those two. There are essential proteins, we've covered those, amino acids. There are no essential carbohydrates. And fiber is a carbohydrate. So if you then break down carbohydrates, so carbohydrate will break down into what we call monosaccharides, which is your glucose and fructose. You've got disaccharides, so sucrose, table sugar, is one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose. So you've taken two monosaccharides and you've got a disaccharide. So when you get into things like polysaccharides, which basically just translates into many sugars. So remember that word saccharide, monosaccharide, one sugar, disaccharide, two sugars. Sugar, 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 carbohydrate, carbohydrate, they are one and the same thing. Polysaccharides, many carbohydrates. And you've got polysaccharides in the form of glycogen, which is the storage form of carbohydrate. You've got digestible carbohydrates, and you've got digestible polysaccharides and indigestible polysaccharides. And fiber is essentially indigestible polysaccharides. So many sugars that you cannot digest. And then you have various forms of those. So people will talk about soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. So soluble fiber will be something that swells or dissolves in water. So you think of your porridge in the morning and you put the oats in milk and warm them in the microwave, and it all kind of blends into this mush. So oats are a soluble fiber. But then if you think of something like, what would be a different example? I mean, lignins or whatever, or brands in some way. I mean, if you put lentils even and sort of just try to stir them in with milk without heating them in some kind of way, they're just going to stay in their form. They're not going to change. And in fact, they stay pretty much in their form, even when you do try to swell them a little bit in water. But I mean, essentially, the fiber is under the umbrella of many sugars that you can't digest. So immediately you should be thinking, if there's something that I can't digest, why am I eating it? And the massive explosion that we've got. I mean, the number of people taking Renes, the number of people taking antacids, over the, prescription antacids as well as over the counter ones. A number of people who will report having irritable bowel syndrome or tummy upsets, feeling bloated after eating, feeling uncomfortable after eating. Almost certainly the fiber that you're eating. There was a great study done over in Asia. It was probably, I think, only about 60 to 80 people. But big enough to be powered to have significant results. And they took people who reported high levels of essentially bowel discomfort. So they were having diarrhea or constipation, bloating, irritable bowel syndrome, pain. They were scoring high on every level of bowel discomfort. And they took them off all fiber. And then they asked them to repeat the questionnaires, what level of discomfort are you having in constipation and diarrhea, And then at the end of the study, they said, right, do you want to go back onto fiber? And virtually every person stayed off fiber. It's like everything was fixed. All of my bloating, all of my pain, all of my problems, everything was fixed when they went off fiber. And there are so many powerful studies like this. If I had somebody who was reporting gastric distress, the first thing I would say to them is just cut down on, this is not advice. I should probably say this. I'm a researcher, not your doctor. But, if it were me or my loved one, I can advise my husband. If my husband had come to me saying, I'm suffering all of that, I mean, he hardly eats any fiber, he would have cut back on fiber. Now you will, whenever you change your diet, you go on holiday, you change your diet, you go and stay with someone, you change your diet, everyone will know when you change your diet in that very short term, you tend to feel a little bit different. So you go on holiday and maybe you get diarrhea or maybe you get constipation anyway. So you've got to give it a bit of time to see that it's not just things have changed. But then, after a few days, heading into a week or two, then you start noticing the difference. But there is absolutely no human requirement for fiber whatsoever. So the next question you ask is, okay, we don't need it, but surely it's good for us. Well, why is it good for us?
Gut bacteria, that's what people say, right? I mean, that's the understanding.
Yeah, so there are so many things that are better for your gut flora. Remember, I was writing about this back in 2004 and I was researching it back in the 90s and reading the books on it back then. There are so many things that are better for your gut flora than beans on toast. And may I suggest that beans on toast is really not going to help because it's basically sugar. which is what the polysaccharides is. So what do you want to do if you want great gut flora? First of all, and you don't get to do this, but you want great parents. Your parents' health has a real bearing on your health. You ideally want to be born vaginally, not through cesarean, because then you're getting flushed through with your mum's gut flora as you're coming out into this world. That's the best little start that you can get. You want to be best breastfed as long as possible. You want mum to be having a good variety of real food while she's breastfeeding you. I know you can't control all of those. Even when you start getting on to the next stage, which is don't take antibiotics as a child unless your life depends on it. You know, again, that's going to rely on mum and dad having good advice in terms of healthcare. You know, he's got a head cold, he doesn't need antibiotics, stop it. So all of those sort of childhood things can stand you in really good stead. But then look at all the other things that feed great gut flora. So it's have a real food diet. Processed food is going to destroy it. Don't take antibiotics when you're older unless your life depends on it. You know, they're not Smarties, they're serious drugs. Dairy, I mean, the lactobacillus, all the gut flora in the natural world comes in dairy products. So be having natural live yogurt, be having blue cheeses, consider having raw milk. I know that's quite controversial, but there are so many sources. Kefir, which has become far more popular, fantastic for gut flora, and you will find you almost feel like you're having a colonic irrigation. I mean, it does really have a bit of a flushing effect, but it's not fiber, it's dairy, it's fat and protein. You know, it's not, there's a tiny bit of carbohydrate in it, but it's not a fibrous food in any way, shape or form. So all of that, and you still don't need to go near fiber. Now, carbohydrates, back to the original question, which are better than others? If you're always choosing your food for the nutrients it provides, so my 3 rules for eating: number 1, eat real food; number 2, choose that food for the nutrients it provides; and number 3, eat a maximum of 3 times a day, unless you're an athlete, a child or whatever. That's a good guide. The second one, choose that food for the nutrients it provides, will always push you down the route of choosing animal foods, because every time you've got a choice, lentils or liver, it's going to be liver. Or bran or eggs, it's going to be eggs. Pasta or oily fish for dinner, it's going to be oily fish. It's always going to be the animal foods, because that's where you find the nutrients in the form that we need them. Now, there are nutrients in plants. I've mentioned sunflower seeds and vitamin E, useful. Nuts can also be useful sources of a number of nutrients. You just have to watch the fat carb mix if you're someone trying to lose weight. And then green things tend to be pretty good. I mean, there's definitely things in the salad, vegetable world, particularly if you've grown them yourself or you know where they come from. And of course, then you've got non-starchy veg more than starchy veg. I'm low carb relative to the government advice. I'm not particularly low carb relative to the low carb world. So I wouldn't have a problem having legumes. You can get some, you know, or tabbouleh or something, you know, you can get some really tasty dishes that have got those kind of things in them. They're not going to cause me any problems, so I wouldn't mind having them. I love fruit, I've always loved fruit, but every time I eat a piece of fruit, I'm aware that I could be eating something that's more nutritious. So I'm aware I'm making a conscious choice to have something because I like the taste, not because it's the healthiest thing that I could be consuming. And then you've got to start saying, is that a trade-off that I'm prepared to make? And I'm slim, I feel good the way I eat, so, you know, I don't worry about having a fruit platter if I'm on holiday and the fruit looks spectacular. I just wouldn't have it every day, and I wouldn't kid myself that it's healthier than the eggs and the yogurt that I probably should have had instead for breakfast. I'm honest with myself.
You've often, I think you've written about this too, focus on nutrient density for weight loss.
Yeah.
So for anyone interested in weight loss, focusing on nutrient dense foods is the way to go for all of us. In fact, for me as a type 1 diabetic too. So, and I think I have to add here, the most nutrient dense foods have the least impact on my blood sugars.
Yeah, they're the animal foods. And that's the problem with the vegans. So the only 0 carb foods on the planet, I mean, forget, you know, there's a little bit of glycogen in liver if the animal had some glycogen at the time that it was killed. But think essentially of meat as 0 carbohydrate, fish 0 carbohydrate, eggs have got a trace, but they're pretty much 0 carbohydrate. Dairy starts to get a little bit more interesting. Hard cheese, very low. Fluid dairy like milk, much higher. You can be getting up towards sort of 10% carbohydrate. So, you know, you do need to sort of look at those. But if you're because those are the most nutrient dense foods, they are naturally the low carbohydrate foods. And then if you're looking at the green veg rather than the starchy veg, you're making a better veg choice because you've got good nutrients in each, but you've just got higher carbohydrate in the carrots. So bang for buck, you're getting more in the green things and the peppers and the if you're okay with cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, that kind of thing, you're getting better nutrients in those, sort of gram for gram or calorie for calorie, sugar for sugar, than you would in things like the starchy vegetables. So yeah, focus on where the nutrients are. You will naturally be low carb. You will naturally be satiated because you're giving the body the nutrients it needs. I mean, when you were that calorie counter and you had the rice cakes and the fruit gums and the 2 apples because you were getting your bang for the buck, the body still sat there saying, but I need all those 13 vitamins and I need all those, probably 16 to 20 minerals. Minerals are more variable, the essential ones. And I didn't get them. So I'm going to make you crave them until you start giving me what I need. And what it really wanted was salmon and green beans with liver pate for starter or something, but it didn't get that. So you're just constantly hungry, looking for the nutrients that your body's trying to get you to get.